I know that there are scores of people plotting to kill me, and this is not difficult to understand. After all, did we not seize power by plotting against our predecessors?
That's quite a chilling quote from Saddam Hussein to kick things off.
It really is. It throws us right into the deep end, doesn't it? Today, we're diving into this really complex and dangerous world of leaders and the plots against them.
Yeah, focusing specifically on tyrannicide. That word itself has such a history.
Exactly. And our mission today, really, is to sift through all the research, the articles you've gathered, and pull out the key stuff.
Kind of a shortcut for you, the listener, to get up to speed on something that mixes history, ethics, geopolitics, and honestly, some facts that just made my jaw drop when I was reading through the sources.
Yeah, there are definitely some surprises in there.
So we're going to look at where the word assassin even comes from, right?
We are. And the whole debate, stretching back centuries, about whether it's ever okay to kill a tyrant.
We'll explore how despots actually try to stay alive, the strategies they use, and then the modern threats. Some really quite terrifying things, like certain national defense strategies.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then. The word assassin, where does that take us?
It takes us back, way back to the 11th century, to the Nizaris, a group in the mountains of what's now Iran.
Okay.
And the thing is, they didn't really have a big army. So their tactic was different. It was targeted, hunting down and killing their enemies.
Right, more surgical.
Precisely. And the story goes, maybe true, maybe not, that they consumed hashish before these missions.
Ah, okay. I think I see where this is going.
Exactly. The term ashishi, which apparently means, a hashish user, somehow morphed over time into assassin.
Wow. That's quite the origin story.
Oh.
From hashish users to, well, political killers.
It is. And it immediately brings up that huge ethical question we mentioned, tyrannicide. Is it ever morally justifiable?
It's such a messy debate, isn't it? Because on one hand, you have this idea of honor in battle, fighting openly. But assassination, operating in the shadows, it often feels, cowardly, treacherous, even if the target is a really terrible leader.
It does often carry that stigma. But views have really varied. If you look at ancient Greece, for instance, some parts of it actually celebrated tyrannicide.
Right. Tell us about Harmodius and Aristogeiton.
Yeah, so 514 BC, they try to kill the tyrant Hippias during a festival.
Okay.
They fail. They get executed. But afterwards, they become heroes. The Athenians put up statues for them.
Statues. That's amazing. But wasn't there more, privileges for their families?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It gets really fascinating here. Their descendants got free food for life.
Seriously?
Tax exemptions.
Yeah.
Front row seats at the theater. And get this, to protect their honor, you weren't allowed to name slaves after Harmodius or Aristogeiton.
That's incredible. What was the justification for celebrating failed assassins like that?
Well, for the Greeks, it was about the core of their society. Every citizen was supposed to have equal standing under the law. A tyrant just destroyed that fundamental agreement, that bond. So removing a tyrant wasn't just okay, it was seen as restoring the natural order.
So people like Aristotle and Plato weighed in on this.
They did. Aristotle saw it as potentially bringing great honor. Plato thought of tyranny itself as sort of a disease of the soul, an errant condition. Killing the tyrant was almost like performing surgery on the state.
A civic duty, almost.
In a way, yes. But then things got much more complicated in the Middle Ages, right? With the whole divine right of kings idea.
Yeah. How do you justify killing a king if people believe God put him there? That seems like a much harder argument to make.
It definitely was. Christian thinkers like Augustine wrestled with it. Generally, they were against it, but Augustine carved out an exception.
Which was?
If the tyrant directly interfered with worshiping God, then maybe it was permissible.
Okay, so a religious loophole. And then there was John of Salisbury in the 12th century.
Right, Bishop John of Salisbury, he made this careful distinction. He said, look, a king works for the good of the whole community, the polity.
Okay.
But a tyrant turns everyone into slaves to serve his own private desires.
So how did he justify acting against the tyrant, given the divine right issue?
He argued that subjects actually have a responsibility to God to ensure the well-being of the community.
Ah, interesting. Flipping the responsibility.
Exactly. He framed it as acting as God's sword against an impious ruler. So removing such a tyrant wasn't a sin against God's chosen, it was fulfilling a duty for God.
It's a clever piece of theological reasoning.
It is. And even though those specific religious arguments aren't as common today, the core questions haven't gone away.
No, definitely not. Is it defensible? Is it sometimes necessary? And who even counts as a tyrant? That seems crucial.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Because tyrant itself has, well, two main meanings, and they really changed the conversation about tyrannicide.
Okay, what are they?
So the common meaning we use today is, a cruel leader, someone abusing power for their own gain.
Right. Oppressive.
But there's an older meaning, which was actually more widespread for a long time. A tyrant was simply someone who took power without having a legitimate right to it. A usurper.
A usurper tyrant. Okay, so it wasn't necessarily about how they ruled, but how they got there.
Exactly. And that distinction matters hugely. Killing a cruel but legitimate ruler is different, ethically, from removing someone who seized power illegitimately, according to that older view.
That definitely adds layers, and it brings up more problems, doesn't it? If killing a cruel leader is sometimes okay, how do you tell the difference between someone doing it for the common good versus someone just doing it for personal power or revenge?
That's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Intent is almost impossible to judge perfectly from the outside.
And how does tyrannicide differ from terrorism? Because terrorists use violence to scare everyone, right?
Right. Terrorism aims to instill fear in a wider population. Tyrannicide can send a signal, certainly, like this behavior won't be tolerated. But it can also be, more narrowly focused, simply removing the despot to allow, say, the Constitution or the previous order to be restored. The motives can be quite different, even if the act itself looks similar.
It's a real ethical minefield.
It truly is.
So, given all this complexity, how often does this actually happen? Are we talking rare events or something more frequent?
Well, the numbers might surprise you. One study looked at attempts on national leaders since 1875, found 298 of them.
Wow. And how many succeeded?
Just under 1 in 5. So success is relatively rare, but the attempts themselves, not so much.
And what about dictators specifically?
Another study focused just on them. Between 1946 and 2010, it found 33 were actually assassinated.
33.
And another 103 failed attempts against dictators in that same period.
So if you're a tyrant, a significant chunk of people probably want you dead. How do you possibly survive that? That's the big puzzle, isn't it?
That is the absolute core dilemma for them.
And in the modern era, the 21st century, what do these attempts usually look like?
Broadly speaking, you see two main types now. You have the really complex, highly planned, coordinated attacks.
Okay.
And then you have the lone wolf attacks. Much less complex, often, but harder to see coming.
Right. Let's take the complex type first. The assassination of Jovenel Moïse in Haiti in 2021 seems like a prime example.
Absolutely. Picture the scene. Moïse, his wife, their kids, asleep in their private home. Suddenly, gunfire erupts.
And he had guards, right, lots of them.
Dozens. But they essentially melted away. His wife hid the children, but Moïse himself was shot 12 times. Executed.
And the story behind how it happened is just unbelievable. The mercenaries involved.
Yeah, the Colombian mercenaries. Court documents suggest this incredible double deception. First, they're told they're going to Haiti to protect Moïse.
Okay, a security job.
Then, right before, the story changes. Actually, it's a CIA operation. You need to kill him.
And then the DEA operation shout.
Exactly. They storm the residence yelling, DEA operation, everybody stay down.
Yeah.
And apparently, many of the president's guards just stood down, believed it was a legitimate U.S. operation.
So none of the guards died. Only Moises.
That's right. It's like something out of a spy novel.
It really is. But it also shows something important, doesn't it? That a functioning security system, good intelligence, proper defenses, it can stop these big, coordinated plots.
Yes, absolutely. And the data backs that up. The overall chance of any leader being assassinated has actually dropped quite a bit since the early 20th century.
What are the numbers on that?
It went from about a 1 in 100 chance per year back in the 1910s down to less than 0.3% annually today. So security has gotten better overall.
But that brings us to the other type. The lone wolves. They seem much harder to stop.
Infinitely harder, almost.
Yeah.
These attacks don't need intricate planning or lots of people. They just need someone with enough zeal, easy enough access to a weapon.
And being in the right place at the right time?
Exactly. That's much, much harder for security services to predict or prevent.
And this leads to that paradox you mentioned earlier, the dictator's dilemma. Can you unpack that a bit more?
Sure. So think about a tyrant. They spend a lot of effort making themselves coup-proof, right? Weakening rivals, controlling the military, crushing rebellions.
Standard dictator playbook.
But the more successful they are at closing off those routes to removing them,
the more attractive assassination becomes.
Precisely. For rivals, for disgruntled elites, assassination might start to look like the only option left on the table.
Ah, I see. If you can't challenge them through the system or overthrow the system,
Then maybe you just need to remove the person at the top. When elites feel they still have some power, they might try to work within the system, maybe engineer a succession.
okay.
But as the tyrant grabs more and more power, even trying to dismantle this system becomes too risky or impossible. Assassination then emerges as this sort of last resort.
And from the tyrant's point of view, it's terrifying because it only takes one person succeeding.
One person. And the pool of people who might hate them enough to try could be huge. It's a constant nagging threat.
So how do they cope? What are the main survival strategies? You mentioned bodyguards.
Bodyguards are strategy number one, similar to democratic leaders, obviously, but maybe with some, let's say, extra qualifications needed when you're protecting a president for life.
But there's a catch, right? The bodyguards themselves can be a threat.
Huge catch. This elite group of fighters you've assembled to protect you, they can become political players themselves. They're right there, heavily armed, perfect position to support a coup.
Any historical examples jump out?
The classic one is ancient Rome's Praetorian Guard. They were supposed to protect the emperor, but they ended up assassinating Emperor Caligula back in 41 AD.
Right, the protectors become the killers. So how do leaders try to solve that problem?
One solution they sometimes turn to is hiring foreigners as bodyguards.
Foreigners, why?
The thinking is they have less skin in the domestic political game. They don't have local loyalties or the legitimacy to seize power themselves.
Makes sense. Are there modern examples of this?
Absolutely. Think about Russia's Wagner Group. They've basically been acting as insurance salesmen for autocrats, particularly in Africa.
Right, I've read about that, like in the Central African Republic.
Exactly. President Touadéra there was being protected by Russian paramilitaries, especially during his 2020 election campaign.
What do these mercenaries do for the autocrat?
It's kind of a triple function. One, direct physical protection. Two, they act as a deterrent. Rivals might think twice if the leader is guarded by tough foreign fighters.
Okay.
And three, they can be used as a force against any domestic rebels or opposition.
And what does Russia get out of this deal?
Well, they get paid, often through things like mining concessions or other lucrative business deals. It gives Moscow a real political and economic foothold.
But there must be downsides for the autocrat trusting foreigners like that.
Big time. They lose a degree of autonomy. There's the risk of what's called state capture, where the foreign power gains too much influence.
And are those foreign fighters truly loyal?
Their loyalty is primarily to whoever pays them, in this case, often Moscow. If Moscow decides the leader is no longer useful or gets the better offer elsewhere, those bodyguards might just pack up and leave. Or worse.
So it circles back again. You can't be sure of anyone's loyalty.
Never. It's the fundamental problem. Remember Laurent Kabila in the DRC with his Kadogo child soldier?
Yeah.
He called them my children. He genuinely seemed to believe they'll never do anything against me. One day, one of those very children walked into his office and shot him 4 times. Killed him.
Wow, even the ones you think are completely loyal.
It shows you just can't know for sure.
Okay, so bodyguards are tricky. What's strategy number 2?
Isolation. Basically, turn your country, or at least your palace, into a kind of fortress, a hermit kingdom, in the extreme.
How does that help?
Well, most assassination attempts happen when leaders are out in public, right? Parades, speeches, rallies. So if you drastically cut back on public appearances, use physical barriers, fences, guards, you reduce the opportunities for attack.
That seems like a big advantage dictators have over democratic leaders.
It is. Democratic leaders have to be out there meeting people, campaigning, shaking hands. Many genuinely enjoy it, but it makes protecting them much harder.
Whereas a dictator doesn't need votes in the same way.
Exactly. They can afford to hide away more. An extreme example was José Gaspar Rodríguez de Francia, the perpetual dictator of Paraguay back in the early 19th century.
What did he do?
He was incredibly paranoid. He basically sealed Paraguay off from the world, slashed trade, barely let any foreigners in or out.
A true hermit kingdom.
Totally. There's a famous story about a French botanist, Aimé Bonpland. De Francia basically took him hostage for years.
Why? What did a botanist do?
Bonpland started cultivating yerba mate, the tea. De Francia saw that as a threat to his own state-controlled trade in it, and he just didn't trust any foreigners. So Bonpland was stuck.
That's wild. And what was it like meeting de Francia?
A Swiss doctor who managed to see him described this atmosphere of intense fear. You couldn't get closer than 6 paces.
6 paces?
Hands had to be open, visible at all times. No one Not even his own officers could carry blades near him. He always had his own pistols right by his side. Imagine trying to conduct a medical exam like that.
Terrifying. Now, obviously, a full hermit kingdom is tough today, but dictators can still isolate themselves, right?
Oh, definitely. They can create a bubble. Look at Putin's meeting with those supposed mothers of soldiers in 2022.
Right, that felt very staged.
Completely staged. The women weren't random grieving mothers. They were hand-picked government officials, heads of pro-war NGOs. He was totally insulated from any real public anger or grief.
And he even told people watching not to trust anything they see online or on TV unless it's faked.
Yeah, basically warning them off any information that wasn't state-approved. It lets him avoid facing reality, avoid facing potential threats that might emerge from genuine public interaction.
To stay inside the bubble. Okay, so bodyguards, isolation. What's the third strategy?
This one is maybe the most insidious, cultivating an extreme cult of personality combined with absolutely brutal repression.
How does that stop assassination?
It aims to create an atmosphere where assassination is just unthinkable, not even contemplated, as one source put it.
How? By making people worship the leader.
Partly, yes. Making them believe the leader is almost divine or all-powerful, all-knowing. You use relentless propaganda billboards everywhere, little books everyone has to carry, controlling schools, TV, radio.
Any examples really stand out here?
Papa Doc Duvalier in Haiti in the 1960s is a chilling case study.
Papa Doc, what did he do?
He very deliberately modeled his public image on Baron Samedi, who's a Haitian voodoo spirit, a guardian of cemetery.
Seriously?
He wore the black top hat, the thick dark glasses, spoke in this high-pitched nasal voice. He rarely showed his hands, all things associated with Baron Samedi.
Wow. That's theatrical.
And deeply manipulative. There were stories, maybe spread by him, maybe not, like him ordering a rival's head be brought to him so he could talk to his spirit.
Creepy.
He'd proclaim things like, "My enemies cannot get me. I am already an immaterial being." He wanted people to believe he was beyond human harm.
And the propaganda.
Extreme. There was even a Papa Doc version of the Lord's Prayer circulating. Our Doc who art in the National Palace for life.
No way.
Yes. Hallowed be thy name by present and future generations. Thy will be done at Port-au-Prince and in the provinces. It was everywhere.
And if the cult of personality wasn't enough...
Then you had the Tontons Macoute, his absolutely terrifying secret police force. Dark uniforms, sunglasses. They enforced loyalty through torture, disappearances, public killings.
So people were terrified into believing he was all-knowing.
Exactly. The fear was palpable. People genuinely believed Duvalier had supernatural powers, that he knew everything. And the result?
He survived.
He died of natural causes in 1971 after more than 13 years of absolute brutal rule. The system he built, this mix of mysticism and terror, seemed to make him untouchable.
So even if a tyrant manages all that controls their bodyguards, isolates themselves, builds this terrifying cult, there's still another threat, isn't there? Assassination from outside.
Yes, the threat from abroad. And that brings us to state policies, like in the U.S.
Right. You mentioned that Air Force chief getting fired in 1990 for suggesting targeting Saddam Hussein personally.
Michael Dugan. Yeah, he was fired almost immediately. And the reason goes back to 1976. President Gerald Ford.
What did Ford do?
He issued an executive order. Very clear. No person employed by or acting on behalf of the United States government shall engage in or conspire to engage in assassination. Period.
And that was because the U.S. had been involved in plots before that?
Exactly. There were revelations about CIA plots supplying weapons used to kill Rafael Trujillo in the Dominican Republic, years trying to get Fidel Castro, targeting Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. The order was meant to stop that.
But there was a loophole, right? Something about wartime.
Crucially, yes. The order specified it applied outside war. The implication being, if the U.S. was officially at war, assassinating an enemy leader might be considered legally acceptable under the laws of war.
Okay, that's a pretty significant loophole. Now, what about other countries targeting each other's leaders? North Korea comes to mind.
Oh, definitely. North and South Korea have a particularly shocking history here. In January 1968, North Korea sent a team of commandos, led by Kim Shin-jo, to kill the South Korean president, Park Chung-hee.
Did they get close?
Unbelievably close. They made it to within about 100 meters of the Blue House, the presidential residence, before they were stopped in a firefight.
Wow. So how did South Korea respond to that?
Their response was, well, extraordinary and ultimately tragic. Just 3 months later, they created a secret unit, Unit 684.
Unit 684.
Based on a remote island called Solmita. They recruited 31 men, mostly petty criminals, street fighters, for one specific mission:
Give me a guess.
to infiltrate North Korea and assassinate Kim Il-sung.
Tit for tat, basically. What was life like for this unit?
Brutal. Horrendous conditions on Silmito. No pay, terrible food, complete isolation from the outside world. Training was incredibly harsh. 2 recruits were beaten to death by trainers. Another died during training exercises.
My God, what happened to this unit?
In August 1971, after years of this misery, they snapped. They mutinied. They killed most of their trainers on the island.
Killed their own trainers.
Yes. Then they escaped the island, hijacked a bus on the mainland, and headed for Seoul.
To carry out the mission against Kim Il-sung?
No, their target had changed. They were going to the Blue House to kill South Korean President Park Chung-hee.
They wanted to kill their own president. Why?
They blamed him, the South Korean leadership, for their horrific treatment and for what felt like their abandonment on Samito.
What happened when they got to Seoul?
They fought running battles with South Korean army and police. It ended tragically. Many were killed or committed suicide, some apparently using grenades. The 4 who survived were captured, tried secretly, and executed.
What an absolutely horrific story. Why did they feel abandoned? Why mutiny then?
The heartbreaking trigger was that their mission, the whole reason for their existence, their suffering, had been quietly canceled.
Canceled. Why?
Because relations between North and South Korea had started to thaw slightly. Detente was in the air. The assassination mission was called off. But nobody told the recruits what would happen to them.
So they felt trapped.
Exactly. Like prisoners with indefinite sentences, as one account put it, stuck on this island nightmare with no mission, no future, no hope of ever leaving. The mutiny was an act of desperation.
That's just devastating. But despite that history, South Korea still considers targeting North Korea's leader.
It seems so. Even with that terrible Unit 684 story as a backdrop, decapitation of the North Korean leadership is reportedly still part of South Korean military strategy today.
Really? How does that work?
Well, a former South Korean general said back in 2015, quite bluntly, "The best deterrence we can have is to make Kim Jong-un fear for his life."
So threaten the leader directly.
It appears to be a two-pronged approach. One is having precision missiles ready to target North Korean leadership bunkers and command centers if things escalate. And the other is maintaining a Special Forces unit, reportedly, specifically trained to go in and kill Kim Jong-un, ideally before he could order a nuclear launch in a conflict.
Why focus so directly on Kim Jong-un himself?
The logic, as explained by experts like Ankit Panda, is tied to the nature of his regime. It's described as a personalistic dictatorship.
Meaning it's all about him.
Pretty much. His personal survival and control are paramount. Threats to the military or the economy might not deter him in the same way as a direct, credible threat to his own life. So the thinking goes, you have to make it personal to deter him.
But that sounds incredibly dangerous. Playing chicken with a nuclear-armed leader's life.
It's profoundly dangerous. Think about misinterpretation. Imagine tensions are high and South Korea launches a conventional missile strike against, say, a North Korean ammunition depot.
Okay.
But what if that depot happens to be near one of Kim Jong-un's suspected underground bunkers? He might see that missile trail, hear the explosion, and think, they're coming for me.
And then
he might feel forced to launch his nuclear weapons preemptively, believing he's about to be killed anyway.
That's terrifying. Are there other risks with this decapitation idea?
Yes. Another huge one involves nuclear command and control. In democracies, you have clear lines of succession, right? If the president is killed, the vice president takes over immediately. It's called devolution.
Right. Keeps the government functioning.
Dictators hate that. A designated successor is a potential rival, an alternative center of power. So they deliberately avoid clear succession plans.
Okay, so what's the danger there if the dictator is killed?
It creates chaos and uncertainty around who controls the nuclear weapons, and Kim Jong-un added another layer of risk in 2022.
What'd he do?
He publicly declared that North Korea's nuclear forces could be launched automatically and immediately if the command and control system itself is perceived to be in danger.
Like if he's killed or out of communication.
Exactly. It suggests a kind of nuclear autopilot or a dead hand system. The risk of accidental launch due to malfunction or panicked officers launching because they think Kim is dead or unreachable, it skyrockets.
So the decapitation strategy could actually trigger the very thing it's trying to prevent.
That's the nightmare scenario. If killing the leader becomes a realistic threat, then every conflict, every crisis becomes potentially existential for that dictator. It pushes them towards using their most extreme weapons, like WMDs, much earlier because their personal survival is on the line from the very start.
It makes the stakes unimaginably high.
Absolutely.
So looking ahead, what's changing the game now? You mentioned drones earlier.
Drones are the big game changer, especially relatively cheap, commercially available ones. Think about that attempt on Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela in 2018.
What happened there?
He's giving this outdoor speech, military parade. Suddenly, 2 drones appear overhead. They explode near the presidential stage. Not a direct hit, but close enough.
And the reaction?
Chaos. Bodyguards rushing Maduro with blast shields, soldiers in the parade formation breaking ranks and running in panic. It was all caught on camera.
What makes drones such a big deal for assassination plots?
They solved the biggest problem for attackers: getting close. Historically, assassins had to be physically near their target, poison and food, a knife, a pistol shot like John Wilkes Booth.
Which meant huge personal risk for the assassin.
Exactly. Booth was shot and killed days later. Gavrilo Princip, who shot Archduke Ferdinand, died in prison. Most assassins didn't expect to get away.
But with drones,
The attacker can be kilometers away operating remotely. They could potentially carry out the attack and escape cleanly. For non-state groups or even individuals, this lowers the barrier to entry significantly.
that must be a terrifying prospect for leaders, especially tyrants who rely on that aura of invincibility and fear.
It absolutely is. It represents a fundamental shift in the threat landscape.
So wrapping this all up, it feels like assassination is this constant, unpredictable factor.
It really is a wild card. A tyrant can try to do everything right from their perspective: manage the elites, crush dissent, use bodyguards in isolation, deter foreign enemies.
But they can't control everything.
Never. Those complex, state-sponsored plots. Maybe good intelligence and security can thwart them most of the time. But the lone wolf, the drone operator miles away, much, much harder to stop.
And that dictator's dilemma, again, the more power they grab, the bigger a target they become.
Even as that same power gives them more resources to protect themselves, it's this inherent, dangerous tension at the heart of autocratic rule.
We've covered so much ground: the ancient history, the ethics, the survival tactics, the terrifying modern threats. But it leaves us with this really big question, doesn't it?
What's that?
When a tyrant is successfully removed, assassinated, what actually happens next? Does life get better for the people? Does it get worse? Maybe even more chaotic and violent?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And it feels like it's so incredibly hard to answer definitively. History gives us examples pointing in all sorts of directions. It leaves you wondering about that uncertain dawn after such a huge